Well, hello, hi. It is me, it is I, Small Town Didi, your Khadija Easy every internet, and Nakastracha, and Bakalau Yala. Yala, please do like, share, comment, and subscribe. Please subscribe. Please let your people know about me. Can we please grow my channel? Thank you. Okay, great. It's so hot in here. It's incredibly. Listen, I am not okay, but I do need to talk to you guys. I can't have a fan on. It's going to make a noise. I can't have windows open. I don't want things flying in. It's a whole thing that I'm trying to manage. This is going to be a quick and short video where my brain is scattered about the place because I don't know if I know that I don't know. I think I might have an opinion or like a stance, but I'm not willing to commit to it because layered, right? There's a lot going on, and I understand what it is we're trying to achieve by doing what it is that I'm going to talk about. And I get it, and I get it, right? What am I talking about, and what's brought this on? I watch the Millennial Mom. I think that is the name of the channel. Yes. And her name is Mandy, I believe. And she has two kids that she's raising. And recently she's just posted a vlog of her moving back home. She's living in Joburg and she's moving back home. And she's a person in her early 30s, I think. Early to mid, but I think early. And then she has a teenager, a preteen, and a little goober, I think a 4-year-old or something. But obviously the vlog resonated with me because I've recently posted about like living at home, as a full-blown like person, as a grown-up, a whole person who's supposed to be adulting in the world, and what that experience has been like for me. So this video was always going to resonate with me, just that I don't have kids, right? That's an extra layer. She has a very important layer that makes our experiences a lot different. But she spoke about the friction that she was having with her teenage daughter or her preteen daughter, and the daughter had to move back home, and there was a whole thing around her schooling. She goes to a Cure Academy in Gauteng, and she says it's cheaper than just like regular Cure, right? And so when she had to move back home to Durban, in order to avoid incurring any kind of fees or being penalized by the school, she had to move her to a Cure school still. But they don't have an academy in Durban. They just have regular old Cure, and like it's not as cheap as what she was paying now. And so it like put her in a situation where she had to reconfigure finances, and it's contributed a great deal to the decision to then have to move back home in order to keep her child in a safe school, but also have her child live with her parents, like live in an environment where they aren't at loggerheads as much, right? And right before I watched that vlog, maybe over a week ago now, because I watched it when it still dropped. Right before that happened, I'd had another conversation with friends of mine about a private school we have in town, right? I live outside of the town. Actually, I live in a township, but I went to the schools in town. So I've been familiar with the school, and I've known people who've gone to this private school. And we're talking about how there's a sign outside of that private school that says no buses, right? And it sparked this conversation where we're like, we understand what that means, right? Having gone to multiracial or Model C schools from primary school all throughout high school, I can tell you that there's very coded language that they employ in order to exclude people. They use certain words as proxy for race. In this instance, proxy for the poors aren't allowed. And the poors are really Black because, like, Blackness is synonymous with poverty. We're the face of it and we can't run away from it. Only a person, like, when you think of a private school like that, that sign can only belong to somebody who's been, like, who would be bused to a private school, except for somebody whose parents can't afford to drive them to school because they have their own commute that they need to worry about, right? Like a Black child, like honestly, the percentage is that a black child who's coming out of town, even the white kids who live in town, it's probably your parents, like it's their route to work. They'll drop you off there. But then it sparked this other conversation that I want us to get into now, where I'm like, when we take our kids, and I don't have children, but having gone to Model C schools, I picked up on some things along the way, and we're going to unpack some of it now. When we take our kids to these schools saying that we want to give them the best opportunities, what are we saying, and what do we really understand by best opportunity and what's good for the child? Are we really fully unpacking that, or we just think because it's said that it's a private school, this is the best thing for my kid, right? And this is nothing to do with Mandy's thing, just added to the conversation that I was having with my friends where my wheels started turning. So this is now outside of that vlog, right? It's just that vlog got my wheels turning as well. Because like learning needs to be, this is just my view, right? The approach to learning needs to be a bit more holistic than what we've like reduced it to, where it's like, if you go to the school, it's going to be okay. If you go to this private school, it's going to turn out okay. It means you're going to be smart and you're going to come out knowing more. And we forget that schooling is a lot more than what happens in the classroom. In fact, how well you're going to perform in the classroom is determined by all the other factors around. And one of them is, can you navigate the culture of the school with ease? Because that's a thing. Schools have a culture, right? And private schools, like the one that I mentioned now, the culture of it is money, like most private schools, right? I understand that and I'm very empathetic to all of it, right? Like, I feel like I understand that we're saying if we don't try to push our kids in there, we're going to see like that gap widen, that inequality of them continuing to have all the things and hoard resources and pour into themselves and never ever have to worry about what's going on outside of their bubble. I understand all of that, right? But have we thought about what it's like for your kid to be in a situation where you start to pick up early that I can't really afford to be here. I'm here about like the skin of my fucking teeth is how I can afford to be here. Can your child afford to participate when they have grandparents day? Are there grandparents who can come to the school and and they like to do little weird events during what are typical work hours, because the culture of such schools is usually that mom is a stay-at-home wife who has helpers still at home, and her job is to just faff and fuss over us. So if we decide that we're having a bake sale at 10 a.m., we aren't thinking half of these children's parents can't make it because they'd work. No, we're thinking dad's at work making the big bucks and mom is a housewife. Of course, mom can be here at 10 a.m. But is that the case for your kid? Right? And then when they keep having these events and your kid can't participate at the same level that the other kids can participate, what does that then do to your child's esteem? What imposter syndrome seeds are we starting to plant in our children when we put them in environments where they can't really afford to be there, and we reduce the entire experience to, oh, they're going to get the best education? It's a little bit more layered than that. They're not going to get the best education because when they're sitting in the classroom, they're looking around and they're feeling out of place. They don't have the latest coloring paints. They don't have the latest whatever bag that everybody has. All you can afford to do is pay the school fees and hope for the best, not understanding that everything else is a supporting act to make retention of information possible. Because if your child is sitting in that classroom and this is and the entire time they just all over the place about, why wasn't my mom at the bake sale today at break? And oh, so and so's parents donated this much to this, and it also affects how your kids get treated at the school, right? So are you in actual fact wasting money? Would you have been better served taking this kid to what you would deem a lesser school, but a school where they can participate across the board outside of academics, right? They can take part in the sporting activities, the the other activities are set around maybe weekends where parents are available to go to these things. Would your kid better be served in that environment versus you being able to walk around saying, oh, my kid goes to Saint what, but like your kid is not having a Saint what experience? It's tough. It's really tough, isn't it? Even when I can tell you I had a similar experience, right? I think I've said to you guys, I had an issue learning to read and write, and hindsight is a base that when I look back on it, it's because I didn't go to a good grade R. I didn't go to a good preschool or preschool that's like aligned similar to the primary school they started me on. So when I got into the class, all the other kids were already speaking English. I wasn't, right? So I was having to catch up in terms of like, what is this language, this like language of instruction that they're using? I was having to understand what's even being said to me first before I could figure out like like the reading and writing bit. I couldn't even speak the way that and it did take like a knock to my self-esteem because I'm this like very loud and confident kid, and I get there and I'm like, oh my god, all the other kids are doing this other thing and they speaking in this, and what now I'm playing catch up. I'm on the back foot and I'm playing catch up the entire time, right? This thing, that's another Ranabatura. It's planned from quite early on. You don't get to do some weird catch up system there. You see it even with the kids that didn't go to a good primary school. When they join us in high school, they struggle to fit in. They struggle to find friends. Their references aren't the same. The inside, like they can't participate. They aren't part of the fabric. They just aren't. And so they're also a little meek in class. They can't raise their hand and they don't feel confident expressing themselves in certain ways. And so what am I saying? Am I saying don't put your kids in the schools? And I'm saying that's the conversation. In some instances, yes, don't put your kids in schools where it's just going to hurt their self-esteem and make it hard for them to actually learn, which is the whole point of having them there to begin with. But I'm also saying I understand why we're doing it, but to give it a little bit more thought. If the child can't take part in the experience that is schooling there holistically, no, don't put your kid there. Don't. And I get that some kids are resilient. Some kids can pick up the fact that, you know what, I'm not like these other kids. I'm here for this and this and this. And I'm like that, right? I experienced that a lot in college, right? Like college was somewhat of a culture shock for me, not necessarily, but like to a degree, right? The kids were very well off in the college, and I knew we weren't there for the same reason. Some of them were there because it's a fucking gap year or some weird shit. And for me, my parents had to get a loan for me to be there. And I could make sense of that we're not here for the same things. I need to keep my head down and do what needs to get done and get out. Like these aren't even my people. I'm not gonna stick around and stay in contact with any of you. No. Okay, I'm here to, but you see, it takes a certain kind of personality to be able to do that. And when you do pick up that your kid is maybe not this kind of kid and they're having a hard time, pull them out. Pull them out and put them in an environment that is good for their self-esteem, where they feel like, okay, I'm on equal footing with the people here. I am not constantly feeling like less of a person. I'm not having a lesser experience, because that's going to contribute to how they're able to perform academically. This got very serious, and I don't know why. Also, this private school stuff. This school that I'm telling you guys about with the sign outside that says no buses allowed or whatever, I went to, when I was in primary school, some kids from that school joined us at some point. I don't know, for whatever reason. I don't know if the finances, they could no longer afford to stay in that school or whatever the issue is. I actually do know, and that is the issue. And they moved them to the school that we were at, like the school that I was at that was still in town, the multiracial school that I was in town. And I'm like, Lily Kiriani with private school, because it's not like Like, I'm sorry. Like, none of you are performing that well. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, like we're making the same grades. In fact, no, we're not. I'm making better grades than you. Like, oh, we get to high school because it's only a primary school. They don't have a high school. This private school I tell you of. So we all meet up at high school, and they don't necessarily perform better than you. And now I understand that putting your kids in these environments isn't always an academic thing. Again, part of that culture has to do with building those lifetime relationships that you can like go and pull from later in life when you need to elevate. Hey, so and so, who my right? Because it's the rich and the rich and the rich. It's such a networking experience being in these spaces. I have a friend whose kid is just started at one of these schools. She's like, babe, these little events they have for these fucking kids are networking events. And I think we know that, right? And that's why you try to put your kids in these schools or keep them there, because you're like, oh, they'll make friends with so and so and they'll keep those friendships for life. And then this little cute like inequality structure gets to continue, or you get to buy your way into the structure. You won't. You actually won't. It's by invite or by birth. And if you don't have the your guys, ooh, who layered, who so freaking layered, hey? But my point is the education bit is a cop out. These kids aren't performing any better than we are. And the ones that are just academically inclined, and they would have done so regardless of the school that they went to. And I mean that. You got if you're from like Tanin, you know the school I'm talking about. None of those fucking kids got to high school and did better than anybody who went to Law School Zanin or Law School Davislof. Even the other private school in Davislof up the mountain. Yeah. None of those fucking kids get to high school and make it to the top 10 and perform better than all the other kids that went to the multiracial or multicultural. No, they don't. So it's not about that. It's actually not about the academics as much as we like to say that it is. It's about it's about all the other things that are beneficial with being associated with these establishments, as it were, right? I went here or he went here. Now people perk up like that. They feel like, oh, you must have come from a little something. It must be beneficial for me to be close to you. This and that and this and that. So the idea that you're keeping your kids somewhere because they're going to get the best education possible, relook that. Sometimes the best education possible is at the other school because they're actually gonna have a better experience overall. But that's it. Mwah, mwah. This was supposed to be 10 minutes. Bye. Bye, Yella.